Alright, what is up? Um, we are doing a new video. I know, two videos in one. That's fucking insane. So, this one is going to be another guide for cleaving with specific units. So, I've made a Zeo one, and I've also made a Naquo one. And now we're going to be talking about Ahmed. So Ahmed cleaving, it's been a thing ever since obviously she came out, but it's been getting slowly worse and worse over time. And I think by the time the what's her name MLU Fiend comes out, I think her place in the meta is going to die out completely. Maybe not completely, but she's gonna be relegated to a 4 or 5 slot. Um, you used to be able to pick her first, second, and be like fine with it, but I feel like now there's too many counters, and we're gonna talk about like when I'm talking. We're gonna be talking about her history for a bit when she first came out, and then what came out in response to Ahmed that just kind of shuts down her game plan for the most part. So I'm not saying she's bad though. Like she's still really good, just not as good as she was before. But this video is mainly targeted for like maybe challenger champion players that want to like push on to the next rank. And if you have Ahmed and you really, really want to make it work, then this video will be perfect for you. I'll go over everything you need to know about Ahmed and all of her team comps and how to draft her and all that stuff. So let's first talk about her build. So obviously my Ahmed is a little bit on the slower side because I'm not an Ahmed cleaver anymore. I am a Ran Zeo Knockwell cleaver. So my speed gear on Ahmed's not that great. But I still pick her sometimes, just because she's really fun, and that's like obviously one of the key benefits of Ahmed is that she's just really fun because she enables almost everything in the game for you. Like if there's a unit you want to try, just pair her with Ahmed. You know, if there's a unit you want to test out with like, it doesn't even have to be a DPS. It could be like a anchor. It could be a tank that needs to take turn one, like an Arya for example. Just draft her with Ahmed, you know? It's so like she's just really really fun. That's like one of her biggest benefits of using her. And the reason why is because of Swift Attack. Swift Attack is one of the funnest buffs in the game because it lets units that push 50% CR, for example, Ludwig, with this you can essentially take a second turn and then use combo S2 into S3. Another example is Kisei. You see me draft Ahmed Kisei before in my videos, and this Ahmed Kisei is like one of the best combos ever. You just nuke everything. Other examples are Edward. Another example is Sharon with this 50% CR. There's Mediator. There's just a lot that you can combo her off with, and that's why she's really fun. But yeah, her build. So there's two builds you can go with her. You can either go full ER with like a little bit of speed, or you can just go pure speed. If you're cleaving the Ahmed, just go pure speed. I think the FRES build is a little bit cope because in RTA, you really just need to take turn one. And there's a lot of stuff that ignore ER, so your ER is going to be useless half the time anyways. And it won't be effective versus effectiveness Zeos that are more common nowadays than DPS Zeos. So honestly, if you're Ahmed cleaving, just do this. Just press this knight button right here and go to recommended equipment and just turn all this down and put this all the way up, put include equipment on, confirm, and then just run this. This should be your Ahmed build. Like if you're gonna cleave with Ahmed, and just give her your fastest speed gear. That's all you need to do, and that's honestly all you need. Like even this with like 110 effectiveness, 248 crit damage, 51 crit chance, this is still gonna be more useful than this build I have on the left, just because she's 12 speed faster, and she can't make use of any of these stats, but it doesn't matter. You just use her for the S2, S3. That's it. So make her as fast as possible. I'd say for champion, try to aim around 290 to 300, and that should be good enough. But Emperor, you need to push around 300 plus. So that's the speed gear for that. Artifacts, obviously you should run her own artifacts because you can get the crit damage and you can get the CR push as well. So if this artifact's maxed out, I think you push 45, I believe. Yeah, 45. So just go to 20 and then 25 on the S2. So 45% CR, which is a lot. Yeah, so her own RD for sure. And let's talk about her team comps real fast. So I made another graph. Let me switch over to that. Okay, so here is her chart, I guess you can call it. It's kind of like a matchup chart, kind of like a what to bring. So on the bottom here, these are her worst matchups slash what you should prevent. And as you can see, there is a lot that has been released slash buffed where Amit is really, really hard to use. In the past, when Amit first came out, there was no Landy. Karina was still being experimented. You can beat Bellion teams with Amit easier than you can with other Cleave teams because Amit doesn't require souls. Moon Bunny was shit back then because she wasn't buffed, and Moonlight Euphine wasn't out yet. So it was essentially only Zeo and Politis that countered her, and all you had to do was just pre-ban them, right? Or you can also just pre-ban Zeo along with Karina, and you can pick Amit Politis, which was one of the most common Cleave openings back then. You can still do it now, but it's just not as good anymore because Landy made Amit really hard to use. Same with Moon Bunny. Like these two units already pushed Amit so much out of the meta. And now with Euphine also coming out, which is just Politis' S2 passive where it reduces her CR push. It's gonna be extremely, extremely hard to first pick Amit. So just be aware of that. Amit's place in the meta is going lower and lower as each day passes. So if I were to give a tip, if you're gonna use Amit, try to first pick Politis, Landy, or Zeo. Just because I think those are her three biggest counters right now. Moon Bunny as well, but the thing with Moon Bunny is it's a little bit easier to play around Moon Bunny than it is Landy, Zeo, and Politis, just because like Landy, you need to draft some sort of like a strip that won't trigger counterattacks. Politis, you just lose to Politis if you have Amit. If you're cleaving, obviously. If you have like anchors, then you could play around it, but it's still really hard. And Zeo, because Cleave just loses to Zeo, obviously. So these three, try to first pick or pair him with Amit in your first, like if your second pick, just pick like, I don't know, Zeo Amit or Landy Amit. And then if your first pick, then just pick Politis, Landy, or Zeo. And then save Amit for second. Now, the next category is our best follow-up combo. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Amit's best follow-ups are units that can make use of her swift attack buff. And those two units are Ludwig and Kisei. So if you have one of those two, definitely build one of them. You don't need both, just one of them. Depending on which one you have, which one you don't have. I'll show you builds for both of them real fast. So for Ludwig, I don't actually have a good Ludwig, so I'm gonna borrow my friend's Ludwig. Shout out Jamsis. This is my friend's Ludwig. It is 440 gear score, 4.7k attack with Torrent, and 293 crit damage. So make sure when you're running DPS with Amit, they should not be more than 300 crit damage. And the reason why is because of the crit damage buff that she gives. So if this Ludwig was like, let's say 330, and then you give him the crit damage buff, you're gonna be bottlenecking your crit damage. So always be at most 300 crit damage if you're drafting Amit. And the speed doesn't really matter. Like speed is nice, but since she pushes up so much CR, all you need is like 180-ish, 180 speed for your main DPS. So this is the Ludwig build that you should try to aim stats for. Obviously put him on book so you can soul burn the S2. Kind of hard to reach stats, obviously, but if you're Amit cleaving, then you should give your best DPS gear to Amit or to Kisei or Ludwig. Now I'm gonna switch over to a Kisei build. I'll show my Kisei for that because I think my Kisei is pretty decent. So let's go to Water Thieves. So this is my Kisei. I only draft Kisei with Amit. This Kisei can one-tap every tank in the game after S3, S2. because of just the fact that she has crit damage with attack bonus on top of her EE, which gives 10% bonus damage, on top of Symbol, on top of Torrent. It's just way too much damage for mitigators to deal with. So this is like what I was talking about, where just give your best DPS gear to them, and she's on attack percent boots. And you can get away with it because her EE gives speed, and Amit gives 45 CR. So that's the reason for that. So your MCD should be close to 15k. If you can get higher, then better. Like, that'll be even better for you. But yeah, I would say around 15k MCD if you can try to aim around that. MCD is just your attack times crit damage. So like mine's like 5,300 times 2.97, whatever that is. Okay, so let's go back to this. Okay, so far our draft is Ahmed plus one of the 3 picks on that second category plus one of the picks on the third category, and we still need 2 picks after that. So what 2 picks do we do? So this will depend on your enemy team. Obviously, if you're picking Ahmed, expect these units on the bottom. People are going to spam these units versus you. So just be careful. For example, if you draft Ahmed, Zio, and let's say Kisei, then let's say your pre-bans are Politis and ML Landy. You can expect them to pick Karina and Bellion almost every time, or Moon Bunny. So you need to draft picks that can deal with those. So this is where I have the really good pairs in. So this all just depends on the enemy draft. Like these picks, some of these picks can you can even drag this one down and put this one up. It just really depends. Honestly, like these 2 categories, they're essentially the same category. It's just I've just noticed that these picks up here have a little bit more success than the picks down here. And the reason why is because if you look at the second category, so the one that says dependent on matchup, these rely on debuffs, or they rely on specific units to be picked. And the thing with Ahmed drafts, you want to draft in a style where they can't just counter your entire team with 1 or 2 picks. You want to branch out your, how do I say it, your matchup spread as best as you can. So I guess the best example for this is let's say they have a Karina and Bellion out on the field. You wouldn't really pick Ran into that because you need souls for that, and they still have an Edward they can still pick as well. And who do you ban there? It's like your Ran is kind of struggling in that position. Like they can still pick Politis. Politis kind of solos that entire team as well. It's really rough to pick Ran into Ahmed's counters most of the time. The only one that he's decent into is Moon Bunny, but the rest, it's kind of sus. So that's why I have him down here. But stuff like Flitty is okay because Flitty doesn't rely on using non-attack skills, so you won't just get cucked by one Politis or something. You can S3, you can skip the S2 if you want. There's just a lot more flexibility there, and you don't land debuffs, so you don't get cucked by stuff like Edward. Flan is here because there is it's mainly to deal with counterattackers. If you draft Flitty, not Flitty, Flitty's a bad example. If you draft Ran or Peyra or Naquo, then you lose to evasion stuff and counterattackers and blue units as well. And Flan kind of skips that, where she can just defense break those targets using non-attack skills as well. Essentially, if you look at there's a really good Ahmed Cleaver. Jams introduced or showed me some of their drafts, it's essentially like Ahmed, Politis, Flan, and then like Kisei / Ludwig, and then a 5th unit. Usually it's what do you call it? It's a flex pick. It just depends on their draft. But that style essentially it stops them from picking Ed. It stops them from picking Savior Auden, from Karina. A lot of stuff that if you were to draft Ran instead, then you can't deal with it. Because if you draft, let's say you draft Ran and Ahmed together, right? Ran is going to be faster, obviously, because he has higher base speed. So let's say you S2, S3. Then if they have Aiden, then she's just gonna one-tap your whole team and Ahmed would have done nothing that game. Same thing if you had Pera. Same thing if you had Naquil. The only exception is if your Ran is slower, but that's kind of weird to do. You shouldn't make your Ran slower than Ahmed. That's because then your Ran's gonna be slower than like C Lilies and stuff. So yeah, that's why I don't really like picking Ran with Ahmed. But obviously, it just depends on the matchup. A really good pair I really like is using Lua Song of Stars with Ailika. Make your Lua faster. She should be faster because she's base 121, right? Unless your Ahmed just has all the best speed gear. But regardless, Lua can S2, S1, double target, and Ailika just S3 and kill everything. And like, if your Ailika is too slow to follow up after the Lua, then you have Ahmed there. Likewise, if your Lua is too slow, then your Ahmed can S2, S3 the Lua up, and then she can just do her thing, and then Ailika can do her thing, etc. Yeah. You'll notice that a lot of Ahmed Cleave teams, they rely on non-debuffs. So you have Watcher, Straze, C. Pavel, Steny to an extent, Vildred, Opsig, Zahak, Sid, right? And that's kind of the same analogy I made earlier, where it's just you don't really want to run a debuff-oriented team if you're running Ahmed, because that kind of like Ahmed should be used to nuke a team by pure damage alone and not by using debuffs. Like you wouldn't draft something like Fairy Tail or like Solitaria with Ahmed, just because you'll lose to like Aiden and all that stuff. But Ahmed Kisei, you don't have to worry about Aiden and all that stuff, yeah, as I mentioned before. So that is why I think her best pairs are stuff that don't rely too much on debuffs, and if they do debuff, then stuff that won't trigger counterattacks. So Flan is like the exception there. Yeah. Now, another really good benefit of running Ahmed is you can draft anchors as much as you want. Because in a typical Cleave team, let's say you have like Zeo Ran, you're running Zeo Ran Cleave, your anchor's gonna take the turn probably after the enemy, right? Like after their LRK or after their Karina, etc. But if you're running Ahmed, then your anchors can take the first turn as well. And the perfect example is running Arya with Ahmed. So what's so great about Arya Ahmed is first Ahmed will push up all of your DPS to go ahead of your Arya, right? Because your Arya is gonna be like 160, 170. So let's say you have Kisei, your Kisei does her stuff, and then you bring like Sid or something, or Steny, they do their stuff. And let's say the enemies are still alive, like pretty comfortably, because you're just getting gear gapped or something. And then your Arya goes. And then your Arya can S3 and give stealth to the rest of your team before the enemy attacks. And that's really, really good, considering the fact that Ahmed gives skill null, team-wide skill null as well. So they can eat one LRK S3 and everyone will still have stealth, and then the enemy team is forced to attack Arya before they even start taking their turn. So your Arya will just clean up the rest of the team for you. If you've seen my videos where I pick Ahmed, I often draft Arya alongside as the only anchor because she keeps the team glued together extremely well. Same thing you can do this exact same thing with Savior Auden, where instead of giving stealth to everybody, you give invincibility to everybody. So it's essentially the same thing. You just push your 170 speed, save your Auden full damage, and she takes a turn before the LRK or mediator or whatever, and then she S3s, it gives everyone invincibility, and then now they have to deal with a full invincibility team. And A Ravi as well, because A Ravi can just pick off a unit with their S3 straight up. If they have like a Moon Bunny or something, you can just one tap Moon Bunny with A Ravi S3. Just a couple options you can do. Yeah. So I think that is everything I have so far. It's a little bit shorter than a typical guide video because I don't draft Ahmed too much nowadays. I guess I'll talk about her depending on matchup picks real fast. So why I have them here. So ML Ken's strictly only for ML Landy. So you can S2, S3 ML Ken and then just blow up an ML Landy for free. Knuckle is here to deal with counterattackers. Bryce Area is here to deal with Moon Bunny. BBK is here to deal with, what's it called? If they pick Green Celine, and then you need, like, Ahmed already counters Green Celine, right? But then in case they ban your Ahmed, then BBK is another secondary check that you can draft. Ran I already explained earlier. Says there is a really cool Ahmed Says draft you can do. If your Says is like 6k attack, his splash damage ends up being like 14-15k, and you can one tap save your Audens that way. Rwana's also matchup dependent because she loses to counterattackers and immunity, and since Ahmed doesn't strip, you don't really want to draft Rwana with Ahmed. Midnight Gala Lilius, she's a decent pick with Ahmed as well, but she's extremely hard to build and she kind of struggles to kill tanks. Pera, again, exact same reason as Ran. Astromancer, if you want to counter attacks. There is something you can do with Astromancer where if you S2, S3, right? And then you S1 with your Astromancer. Or not S1, my bad. If you S3 with your Astromancer, she's going to get 50% CR, right? Because of Swift Attack. And if you use one more AoE after that, so let's say you have an A Leica, right? So you Astromancer S3, and then your A Leica takes the next turn. And then you S3 with A Leica. Your Astromancer is going to push all the way to the front if she's on Unseen Observer, and she can essentially take a second turn with the S1 because of her 40% CR push-up. So that's a cool tech you can do with Astromancer. You can do the exact same thing with C Pavel. So if you're running, let's say, Ahmed, Straze, Watcher, C Pavel, and then let's say you run like A Leica and they ban A Leica or something, then what you can do is S2, S3, C Pavel, right? And then in my experience, C Pavel's speed is too slow to cut your Straze. So your Straze S3s gets a kill. And then your Watcher goes next because of Sash Idane's procs, or your C Pavel goes, doesn't really matter. You S3 with whoever. If it's Watcher, then C Pavel activates. If it's C Pavel that takes the next turn, then you can S3. And then C Pavel's going to be at 50% CR because of him having Swift Attack, right? And keep in mind, C Pavel's S2 hasn't activated yet if C Pavel took the turn before Watcher. So the rotation is Straze S3, C Pavel S3, and then now your Watcher takes the turn because of Sash proc. You S3 Watcher on someone, let's say they have, I don't know, like some sort of tank, like Karina or something, I don't know. And then you S3 that unit, and then because C Pavel is at 50% CR, he's going to use his S2 because that's your second crit, right, off of Watcher. He pushes up all the way to the front to 100% CR after his S2, and then you can S1 again on someone. It's very, very confusing. I should, like, my best example is just showing, or what am I saying? The best way to explain it is just showing an example, so I'll just do a quick example here. Let's find a team on Arena real fast. Everything has ML Landy, so this is very tragic. Okay, so let's run versus this. Let me switch over my display. So this is like one of my favorite arena teams. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is just manipulating with their swift attack buff because it's so good. So we'll S2 here. And as you can see, Steve Pavel won't be able to cut anything because of his speed is just a little bit too slow, right? So you can push up Steve Pavel here. And then Celine, like, this is RTA, like, she can't kill anything anyway. She can kill Ahmed, but like, Ahmed's already has done her job, so it really doesn't matter. Alright, so Ahmed dies, it's whatever. Alright, so Strasnik's gonna get a kill here. Right? And then Watcher takes a turn because of Slash proc. And then let's say you kill MLCan or something. Oh, I guess this is a bad example. I guess in that scenario, it didn't really matter, but... And my Watcher was not supposed to take the turn. But you can imagine if Steve Pavel took the turn there and he S3'd, then he will be able to take a second turn after Watcher uses his S3 because of his swift attack buff, and he'll push up 100% CR. So it's kind of a bad example, but you get what I'm trying to say. Let's switch back, and yeah, I think that is it. I didn't really talk about Jacko. You don't really want to draft Jacko with Ahmed because Ahmed doesn't strip anything or she doesn't debuff with anything, so avoid Jacko. Giselle is also okay, but her damage is a little bit lackluster because she doesn't have pen. But she couldn't work. She couldn't work in some scenarios. Now, the only problem with Ahmed, like I mentioned, once Yufin comes out, just look at the bottoms. All these 7 units, Ahmed struggles very heavily too. And it's like a lot of these picks, you can't, even if you draft a second opener to counter them, it's still really hard. Just because they can ban that combo. So that's why Ahmed is like a little bit. Yeah, I'm worried about Ahmed's usage rate after Yufin comes out, but yeah. Regardless, if you're just climbing in Challenger Champion, then you shouldn't have to worry about any of this really, because a lot of people misdraft all the time, especially in the higher ranks as well. So don't worry too much. Just play and cleave who you want to cleave with. So that's all I can really say. And remember what I said about the build, just prioritize speed. It doesn't matter about other stats. She can be on broken set, it doesn't matter. She can have 100 effectiveness, it's fine. And yeah, I think that is it. Is there anything else I'm missing? Nope, I think that is it. Yeah, there's really nothing else. Alright, well, I will save this image and I will post it in the description in case anyone wants to see it, like up close. And then I will try to make a cleave guide on other cleave units in the future. I think the next one I want to do is Faithless Litica with C. Pavel. Or imprint cleaving. How to do a proper imprint cleave. I think that might be my next idea. Yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. So anyways, I hope you enjoy that. I'll talk to you guys later.